Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao, and today we're going to be talking with one of the country's best and most, I guess the best term to use is a high-tech technology company out there. I'm in Florida, where it's nice and sunny, actually a little cold, but nice and sunny, and he's in, I think, Ithaca, New York, and there's 3 feet of snow. So, and you can see the snow in his background there. I don't have a nice image of my background, but today we're going to be talking about some IT trends, cybersecurity trends. The episode is called Cybersecurity, HIPAA Compliance, and IT Best Practices. So, if you are on social, if you're on any of the Facebook groups, you definitely have heard of this gentleman. If not, turn up the volume on your radio and listen to this podcast episode. So, please help me welcome Reuben Kamp from Darkhorse Tech Incorporated to the podcast.
Great.
Reuben, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I can't leave my house, as you can see, so I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's lucky that you actually have a place to podcast in your house and you didn't have to go to somewhere else, or then you wouldn't be able to get there. So It's good that you can do this in your home. So for those that don't know who you are, and I know we talked about how people on social know you, or if they're in Ithaca, they know you. They're in one of the Facebook groups there. You're very popular. Let me read your bio. I'll have you expand on it a little bit, and then we'll want to jump into the content here. So he's actually the son of a general dentist in Ithaca, New York. Reuben got a Biochem degree from UNC-Chapel Hill, thinking he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. Realizing his true passion was technology, he graduated with the degree, threw it in the trash, and then went to work for Benco Dental, installing computer networks, CBCTs, sensors, and technology all over the country. After some years, Reuben left and started Darkhorse Tech to focus more directly on IT and customer experience. Darkhorse currently supports 675 dental offices in all states, and as well as the Cayman Islands and Guam. So interesting. You are a son of a general dentist, and you thought you wanted a different career path. So it's interesting because I'm the son of a general dentist. I also wanted to go into technology. I thought I was going to be some computer science guy or something, and turns out I went down the dental road. So a little bit of a different, kind of mirrored image there of what we did. So Reuben, why don't you kind of expand on that a little bit? Add some of your own little flavor to that bio, and then we'll jump right into these topics.
Yeah, I think how people get into the dental industry is so interesting because it's such a weird place to end up. And for me, it was I was born in the upstairs of the dental office my dad practiced in. My uncle is a prosthodontist. He taught at UNC-Chapel Hill. That's ultimately he gave me the recruiting pitch, and that's why I ended up there. And I guess I didn't really know. I was always a computer nerd, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So I'm sure many people have gone through the same pathway where you just kind of go through the motions of, well, if all else fails, at least I'm at least pointing in the direction of pre-med, pre-dental, and I'll figure it out. But by the time junior year rolled around, I'm already through organic at that point. I'm volunteering in the dental clinic in the hospital there at UNC, doing all the right things. It just wasn't there. The let's say the bet to pay UNC a bunch of money to find out if I liked dentistry, I wasn't ready for that. So I graduated. I was lucky enough. This was during the financial crisis, so there was a little gap in there where I was a dishwasher for like 6 months for a Cajun restaurant, and then I got a job at Benco Dental. And the funny part about that, it's really, you think you go into a corporation and they have all their processes down, but no, they hired me. There was one other guy that I worked with. They fired him 2 weeks in, and then all of a sudden it was me trying as the expert and installing computer networks and CBCTs and sensors all over the country. And so luckily that worked well. I met fire with fire and learned really quickly. But that kind of experience and Benco's, IT is one thing they do. So their focus is kind of distracted amongst consulting, and consumables obviously is their biggest area that they focus on. And so as I got more acclimated to the industry, and I'm very passionate about IT, that it left a little bit to be desired. So I left and started Darkhorse, and we've been very, successful in making dentists happy. And ultimately, now where we are, as you mentioned, 675 offices. We also did 60 startup practices last year. So those are our two main focuses: is making current dental offices secure and give them faster response time. But then we also design and build startup practices.
It sounds like the fact that you were traveling around the country for Benco really helped. Most IT companies are more localized. There's not national IT companies that are very well known in dental. So in this case, your traveling probably helped you decide that you can do something on a national basis.
Yeah, a lot of companies just stay in their ecosystem, and I think it was about 6 years ago when I got Howard Ferran, I guess, found me. So I still don't know how he found me, and invited me out to Phoenix, and I set up his office because he just had like a Bob, the IT guy, who was not compliant at all. And we still work for him now, and that kind of gave us like, oh yeah, so New York, yeah, we can probably do this. And then came the exodus of dentists from Facebook, or should say from Dentaltown to Facebook, and then you get the influencers and people like Glenn and Nissa Holmes and Doc Hoffbauer, and I was very fortunate to make a good impression on those folks early on, and obviously I was just helping people out on Facebook, and then it turned into, hey, what if you had to deal with a group, and that's seems the way referrals work now in the dental industry.
Hey, if you can do that and you can join it, it works really well. That's for sure. How long were you with Benco before you went on your own?
I was there about just a little over 3 years.
Oh, so not that long. So I know I'm a Benco client now, so that's why I was curious how long you were there. So you probably know more people.
My dad still uses Jim Rook here in upstate New York for his rep. So wasn't I had a singular bad boss, but I have nothing terrible to say about Benco, specifically the company.
Gotcha. So let's, a lot of questions I get, and, I have a group, Raving Patients, that have about 2,700 dentists in there. And, people throw questions at me, not just bad about reviews, but business in general. And, a lot of people ask me about, IT stuff, and I'm certainly not an expert in any way, shape, or form, especially with IT. So let's start talking about some of the things we wanted to get into here, one of which is cybersecurity trends in 2020 and 2021. So what direction do you think things are going? What are you seeing within the industry?
So one major thing happened with cybersecurity and ransomware, which are in dentistry pretty much married together at this point, is exfiltration of data. What that means is before you would get ransomware and everything would stay local or on premise, the hackers in Russia or China would not take the data offsite and try to find out what it is. They are doing that now. So that means the healthcare industry has a much larger target on their back than they used to. And that means the ransoms they're asking for are in line with, hey, you're a dentist, you can probably pay that perception, right? You're a dentist, you can probably afford this. So we're seeing a more targeted effort towards both DSOs and small dental practices. And when we look at the statistics of, hey, let's actually go into an office and see if this dental office is compliant, the industry average is about 2%. So we're talking about most dentists out there, including many of your listeners, even if they think they're hip, it's like that, hey, I think I'm a good driver, but how many actually good drivers are out there? It's that kind of perception reality battle we fight every day. Most people are not following even just the basic tenets of, backup, firewall, antivirus, email encryption. And that is leading to a lot of funds leaving dentists' pockets going to other countries.
So can you talk to me and the listeners about really what a cyber...
We're good. So they're being targeted because, again, the health data is valuable, and you're talking about a lot. There's the perception of wealth amongst dentists. There's insurance that can pay for this, and so just think about a situation in which an office has a traditional backup that's connected to the server. They get hit with ransomware. Everything's encrypted, so they can't even get to their backup. So the only way to get back, I don't know, their 15 years of digital data and start seeing patients again is to pay the ransom. So you can see why that kind of first gut instinct is like, how much does this cost? I'm going to do $20,000 production today. I'll just write a check for $10,000 and be done with it. So one, they're being targeted because dentists are paying, right? So they have that information that the data is valuable. Dentists are actually paying to get it back. And yes, they are taking the data offsite and they're able to see what it is, right? Social Security numbers are probably the most valuable piece of information they can pull from a dental office. It's not so much root canal, right? It's not the sexy x-ray. Are there any sexy x-rays? I don't know. Maybe Len knows, but
no.
We're talking about Social Security numbers is really the crux of the conversation. It would be a completely different scenario if it was like a celebrity plastic surgeon, right? Then yes, that data is very important as well.
So you said there's only 2% of offices that are compliant. Are they Are they just randomly going to offices and seeing if they can get in? How do they pick a specific office? I understand that, yes, the offices are being targeted because dentists are perceived to have money. They'll pay for the data to be given back to them. But do they just randomly go online and find something and see if they can hack into it? How is a particular office targeted per se?
So there's a couple different ways you can mine this information, and unfortunately, there's this whole thing going on with dental conferences. They're not happening this year. This was happening before this, but now it's getting more kind of insidious here. They have lists, right, of every single staff and dentist that has signed up, and they sell this list. They try to sell it to me every single day because I've attended these conferences as a sponsor. And they're like, hey, you want a list of dentists? Here you go. So these lists are out there. The email addresses are out there. And obviously, if you are, these groups are sophisticated enough to see a DDS, a dentist, a dental in any sort of Gmail, account, they can directly target dental offices from that. So, and we see ransomware, which again, is the number one thing we worry about. 91% of that, the vector is email, right? So that piece, that hey, your UPS package is, delivery exception, click this link. You have a court date, click this link. Like, people are clicking these links via email, and at that point, it's past the firewall, and then you're fighting a battle with your anti-ransomware. How strong is that? And then you're fighting a battle with, if it gets past that, is your backup set up properly? No? Well, if you want your data back, you better pay the ransom. But hey, if the FBI gets involved, they say maybe you can't pay the ransom because then you're funding terrorists. It's a mess.
So what you're saying is they're targeting these offices because they have lists that myself and you can buy because we're sponsors per se. Yep. They get the email. They send the office an email, which is obviously something that's not legit. The employee or even the dentist clicks on it, and that brings the virus into the software if it passes the firewall and then passes the antivirus. And if the data isn't backed up properly, you're done. That's really what's going on here. And they have data that you have no access to at that point.
Yeah, your only choice is to pay. They will give you your data back. And that's why the system works so well, is you pay them and you will get it back in every scenario I've seen. So with that, before we were talking about the data was not exfiltrated. So if you didn't pay it, well, at least they didn't have your data. But what's happening now is they're kind of raising the stakes. Oh, you don't want to pay? They're publishing your data online, and they're using that threat as blackmail. So the stakes are even higher than they were before.
So how often you have 600 plus offices, how often are you seeing it yourself, or how often are you hearing about it in the industry? Because for someone like myself, who's a dentist and an industry influencer, I hear about it, but I've never heard of anybody actually being attacked personally. But obviously, it happens more than we want to believe.
Yeah, I mean, so the good news is if you do the basic tenets of what the HIPAA tells you to do, you're most likely fine. It's the people that are just like, they either have the company that they're just like, oh yeah, you're good, and they don't actually check, is when you kind of get into trouble there. So, how many clients do we have that deal with this on a daily basis? We haven't had to deal with it in 5 years from a client of ours, right? We are experts in the field, so we're called upon in terrible situations where we have to Superman in and say, all right, and kind of be the quarterback and tell people what has to happen. So, I never thought going into starting, being an entrepreneur, starting Darkhorse, I'd have an intimate knowledge of how the FBI and OCR works and their reporting requirements. But I have it now, and they do call. It's very interesting.
So talk about first what an office needs to do, or how they get in compliance, or what you think is necessary to protect yourself from this, because it could be a very expensive, mistake, or not even a mistake, but an oversight by not actually making sure that your IT is secure to prevent you from something like this from happening.
Yeah. So the easiest thing you can do right now as a business owner is ask your IT company for a risk assessment, right? That is essentially what the FBI would ask for if something happened, right? How does your backup system work? If something goes down, what's the plan? Is the data recoverable, right? Can you test it and see if it's recoverable? Otherwise, it's not a backup. What do you use for antivirus software? What do you use for your firewall system, right? So there's 3 main layers, and email security would be a 4th layer. But if you think from, the firewall is your external protection, right? So, North Korea lobs over a missile to the United States. There is a missile defense base on Kauai ready to shoot that thing down. That's your firewall. You have the antivirus software. That is essentially your internal police force trying to stop things from running. So you download that email, you click on the link, now that file's on your system. How fast can those T cells glom on and stop it before it gets and destroys your entire network? And then finally, the backup is honestly your last line of defense. So if we're talking backup, you're down, your patients are staring at you. Why is your system down? Your staff's looking at you. So we don't want to ever put our clients in that position if we can help it. And that's our mission to do every single day we come to work here. But the backup is there if all else fails. And if it's directly connected to a server, it's getting hit just like the server got hit. So you have to make sure that is separated. It can still be local, that's fine, but it has to be separated on the network so that the ransomware can't jump. So we literally use a different operating system. We use Linux-based backup systems so that Windows ransomware comes in, it can't make the jump. And that system is protected with a firewall. But then there's also the cloud piece in case anything happens, flood, fire, and theft. So all IT companies offer these theoretically. If they know enough about healthcare and they take themselves seriously, this minimum set of things should be in place. And the good news is you'll most likely be not having to deal with this stuff if those buckets are filled.
And you talk about that there's insurance that you can get to actually, I guess, help pay for this if you get a ransomware attack. Do you know how much they cost? I mean, I'm just looking at also other ways that you protect yourself, because if something does happen, I don't think I want to write a check for $10,000. So
dental policies we see are somewhere between $12,000 and $2,000 per year. So nothing that's going to break the bank. They're not sexy or anything like that, but it's just one of those, insurances you probably should have. In a perfect world, let's say your system gets compromised, that should fall on your IT company's cyber, not even yours, but how many people are going to step up to the bat and do that? You'll find out when it happens, probably not. So that means it falls on you. And you have things like you have cyber liability insurance, you have breach coverage, you have reporting coverage. So what this means is if you actually get breached and you have to notify all your patients, and then you have to launch a media campaign to protect your reviews, your image, your world, all of that is covered, not just the fact that you were down for 2 days and lost, let's say, estimate $25,000 in production.
Gotcha. So, are there any company? Is this a standard insurance that you ask for from your liability coverage, or do you have to go to a special company for this type of coverage?
There are special companies, but 2021, most office insurance providers we see have added this by now. It wasn't like that, let's say 2019. So it's common. But again, this is another great question you can ask your IT provider. Do you have cyber liability insurance, right? If your system's failed and I'm down, what are you going to do about it? And what's your coverage limit, right? So if you have someone like me who's doing almost 700 offices, $500,000 is not going to cut it, right? So, when I'm paying a lot more for insurance than that because I don't want to lose my business based on one scenario, right? And so I think maybe this industry just needs to do a little more vetting on the IT companies that they entertain, because usually by the time you find out, it's too late, right? And you're like, oh, you were going to pay for that, right? And then they're going to stop responding to your emails.
Well, this is not a cybersecurity issue, but it's funny you mentioned that. I had a dentist. Well, I sold a Drobo. I'm sure you know what that is, a Drobo. I sold my extra Drobo on eBay, and it was basically the enclosure. It wasn't the actual drives, obviously, but I had an extra enclosure. I put it on eBay, and a person reaches out to me and says, "I need to buy this right now." And I'm like, "Can I give you this? Can you do it for this price?" And I was like, "Sure." And he says to me, I happen to be a dentist of all things. He was in Portland, Oregon. His friend does his IT, and his entire system was down because his previous Drobo had failed. So he's backing up onto a Drobo, and his Drobo failed. So he was told by Drobo to go out and buy another enclosure. So he was looking for a cheap enclosure to get his system back up and running. So he paid me it's not a light device. I actually have one sitting right here. So I overnighted him for like $250. He got it, and he messaged me that when he plugged everything back in, everything came back up again on his own. So you just imagine, to me, that's what you that's the vision I got when you said you have to really check into your IT company, because if it's somebody that's not legitimate or doesn't really take great care of what's going on, I can see your front desk gets an email talking about, hey, I won the $1 million lottery or something, and they click on a link, and boom, you got your system is ransomed by these people trying to get data from you. So I can just imagine the scenario in my brain. So interesting.
Am I secure? Obviously, that's the most important question, but a follow-up question that kind of ties to your story. If I do go down, how long will I be down for? Right. So our system is 10 minutes. Most systems you're talking about a full day. And that's the difference between, someone who has their, what together, and like, I need to buy something on eBay right now, have Len overnight it to me so I can plug it in and have the RAID rebuild and get my data. And then I have to rebuild my system. Right. So that was just him to get his data back. He still had to, install Dentrix or OpenDental or Eaglesoft again and network everything back together. So that was probably a very painful situation for him.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, and I've gotten, and it kind of ties into this, is how does and we'll talk about cloud in a minute, but how does having a cloud system affect the way the ransomware is? It's the same just because it's a server in the cloud? Is there anything different involved there?
Yeah, so you still have downtime because your computers are unusable, but it does not, right now, it does not make the leap to let's say native cloud, like true cloud applications. It will not make the leap to the the Care Stack or the Curve server, right? So this means, yes, you could go run out and buy a laptop at Best Buy, or you have something else, and you could potentially get yourself back up. So it reduces the let's say it doesn't make that jump, kind of like how I explained how we made our backup systems, that there's a gap, an error gap between them. But it does not prevent you can't use any of your computers. Gotcha.
So let's talk about HIPAA compliance then, and what, from your perspective, offices have to do to maintain being in compliant with HIPAA, email security, and those type of things. So I'm curious about that, only because I only recently switched to you guys for my email. So talk to the listeners about HIPAA compliance, what's required, and compliance there.
Yeah, so there's three main rules. Our company primarily focuses on what we can control, which is security rule and the technical standards. There are, just so everyone knows, administrative standards. That's documentation related to who has access to your building, training. That's the admin rule is the paperwork rule, right? The physical securities is another part of it. That private conversations. Again, that's really not our realm, unless we're designing a dental office and we have some advice on, hey, you might want to put a speaker here so that that conversation about some sort of treatment is private. But in our world, the technical of this, which is under the security rule, says you need to have a backup. It's got to be encrypted. It's got to be local. It's got to be something offsite, and you have to know if it works. Right? I can design a system like that. It says you need a firewall to protect your network, right? It's got to have, when updates are released, you have to patch it within a couple days, right? It says if you have Windows or Mac computers, again, updates are released, you need to patch this is healthcare, right? You have to patch those security holes. That's why these come out within, 48 to 72 hours. You need to have antivirus software, so you know what's running on your network. And that's obviously protection is a piece of it, but knowing what's on your system, because there are viruses, as you know, they just want to chill and steal keystrokes, steal information. And then there's ransomware, which is more of a, they want to actually extort money from you, not silently steal information. So just, knowing what's on your system. So keeping it up to date, antivirus firewall backup, email encryption, so you can send patient health records securely, and train your staff. And you should be like in the 99.99% that never have to deal with this stuff.
Gotcha. And now I wanted to talk about the other thing I get a lot of questions on, and I told you prior to us actually recording, was cloud versus local. So cloud versus server-based, the future, where your things are going, any nuances, tips, tricks, anything that you can, we can have a conversation around the cloud softwares and what you're seeing in the dental industry.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll talk on ortho, and ortho is like cloud is the standard. Besides Dolphin, pretty much everything, Ortho 2 Edge, Cloud 9, everything has been out for a while. It's stable. It's good. In general dentistry, it's not like that. Like cloud is still very in its infancies right now, and so we still see, it's like 75% of all dental practices in California, Arizona are Dentrix, right? Dentrix G7, or hopefully they're on G7. G6, G5, G4, something at least up to date. So the vast majority of offices out there, and including our clients, we have about a 1% cloud rate currently, right? So 99% are server-based. That is still overwhelmingly the majority of offices here. So there's kind of three levels. There is the local, there is the cloud-hosted piece. So we can take Open Dental, let's say, put it in the cloud, and you can have your imaging local, or you can make that cloud-based as well. And then there's the true native cloud. So this is, you go to drlen.carestack.com, and your whole office is accessible via browser, right? Everything is interacting through Chrome. So, a lot of people don't like that full cloud experience right now, just because they're so new, they're not really tested, and they're closed ecosystems. So you need to you have to drink the Kool-Aid with that company. Like if you sign up with Dentrix Ascend, you're all Dentrix. You have no choice. And this is why people like Open Dental. The cost is great as well, but you can choose from, 300 third-party integrations with it. And so you have flexibility of, I don't really like the way Dentrix Ascend does paperless. I can choose Flex, Medento, Yappy, whatever. There's Opera DDS. There's so many integrations out there. And so that is kind of the throws that is going right now. The argument's going right now, but there's no true native cloud leader in general dentistry or pediatric or anything right now.
In your fuse, you've obviously seen I would assume all of the products in action, how they perform. Any one particular one or two that you like over the other ones in what you've seen?
I have no affiliation with them Open Dental is probably my favorite software that's out there. It allows you to do so much, and there's not a lot of no's. No, you can't do that. Like, hey, what if I wanted to do that? They'll either give you the solution or be like, hey, you can just write your own program or hire somebody in India to write the program for you if you want it to function like that. And so, I mentioned at the top, we did 60 startups last year. 57 of them went Open Dental with a server, right? So if we're talking about new practices from scratch, Open Dental with a server is right now still the standard. Now there's people that didn't make that choice, or people in ortho that went cloud. So, there's some nuance there, but if you're saying general dentist startup practice, pretty much by the time they're talking to me, they already know they want to use Open Dental.
Gotcha. And then any particular cloud platform that you like over one or the other?
Yeah, the two that I like CareStack and I like Oryx. Those are my two favorite. Now, CareStack was more, I talk about a lot more with multi-site practices because they were kind of first designed they were for Midwest Dental as one of their clients. So they were first designed and battle tested with multi-site offices, and then now they're coming back around to focus on individual practices. So they have a lot of features that a lot of softwares don't have, and they're pretty robust. If you're someone who manages multi-practices, that's really good. I really like Oryx for single or just like a 2-office setup, and they have some really cool features at the Koi Center, which I'm sure most of your listeners know about, that make like the pathology and pretty unique experience with the charting and pathology piece.
Yeah, it's funny, as you said, Oryx. I just got a dentist who reached out to me. I'm asking if Bird Eye is working with Oryx, and I had one other client a while back, and he was with Koi's, and that's how I heard of it. And obviously, that's a much smaller cloud platform compared to some of the other ones.
Right.
But it's interesting. You only said there's only 1% of your clients that have cloud. So it's 6 or 8 or 7 or whatever the number is.
Right.
It's not that many. What is it?
For it. I will say, I mean, people, they're like, hey, it's 2021. Shouldn't we be cloud? I'm like, yeah, probably. But, ortho gets all the fun toys, and, medical built this out long ago, and we're kind of lagging a little bit. And Open Dental is so good. And they're not even trying to develop a native cloud system, right? They're trying to kind of do what we do internally, is offer that cloud hosted solution. So if you look at Dentrix and Dentrix Ascend, Dentrix completely rewrote a new system because they had to. Patterson and Fuse, they completely rewrote. They're two different programs. And Open Dental is just like, everyone loves our system, and they're not even investing in resources to do that.
Gotcha. So if somebody comes to you right now, the way I look at it is that, unless you're having a problem with the current system you have, or you're a startup business, switching from your server-based software to a cloud-based software as an existing business is a real royal pain in the ass. The conversion, the data conversion is a problem. This could be problematic. So unless you're a new startup, I think that's when you really consider going to a cloud as a new startup business right now. When you have a client that reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I'm new. What are your recommendations?" And they want to strictly go to cloud. Do you have a similar type of conversation with them? How do you let them know the good, the bad, and the ugly of dealing with cloud?
Yeah. So we're talking about startup practice.
Yeah.
In this scenario. So I have perception is a real thing, right? So I'm looking at things as how many service issues is this creating for our clients, and a dentist is looking at it by how can this make me more efficient, more profitable. So I always recommend doing demos, because what I care about and what the dentists care about, sometimes they don't always line up. I'm like, I want this not to cause any issues, which is great. I'm sure dentists want that too, but that's not their leading probably choice on these. So I definitely still have them interview with the companies that we just mentioned to make sure it's a good fit. It's a much harder scenario, as you alluded to, if there is a whole years and years of data, and let's say EagleSoft is one of those programs that is a unified practice management and imaging solution. Whereas hey, I'm Dentrix and Dexis, you can just replace Dentrix and leave Dexis alone in this scenario and you only disrupt one part of your business. It is very disruptive. You should be ready for it. You should be ready for 6 months of just, catching up with how efficient you were before. So, if you're making that change, definitely have a clear goal and ROI in mind. And some people took advantage of the downtime with coronavirus to make this change to another software. So
interesting. And what type of hardware do you need, and really a network connection, more in my mind, for cloud-based? Because you eliminate the server, but you obviously need workstations still to have the software running.
Right. Yeah. So like we talked about with a local server, single points of failure. Your single point of failure is now your internet connection on a cloud-based system, right? So if that goes out, now you've lost phones because you're using, Weave or, Mango, Ring Central, and you've lost your practice management software. So the backup becomes no more the single line of, the last line of defense, I should say. Your redundant internet connection or failover system is really important. So that's where we have differentiation on our firewall offerings, one for a local, one that's called the C model, the Cisco C model, that actually integrates Verizon LTE and AT, any LTE provider into it. So if you even have like a 30-second outage, or minutes or hours, that at least your system is still up. So that is how we've attacked the internet fragility part of this. You can always buy fiber and pay $2,000 a month and get 100% uptime. Or you could have Cox and Spectrum and have two connections in. But the most cost-effective solution is just to have that $40 a month backbone of Verizon LTE ready to go if you need it. Interesting.
That's really interesting to hear. Where do you see the trends in cloud going? Do you see, we're talking about, 1 or 2% of the population of the dental offices are on cloud. Obviously, that's not a lot, okay, the overall offices.
Right.
Give it 5 to 10 years. What do you think's happening?
Everything should be completely native cloud in that timeline, right? I've been into offices that, again, run Dentrix from 10 years ago. They haven't updated it. So you're still going to have the stragglers. But I think from a starting from scratch standpoint, you're going to have a completely cloud-based offering from the get-go. And it just won't, server-based systems just won't be competitive, especially in a startup situation where get this office open for as cost effectively as possible. Throwing a $2,000, $3,000 server in there just puts you out of the race. And then the other big thing is what's starting to happen is we're now working with Apteryx, was acquired by Planet DDS. They have direct integrations, and we're a reseller for them now with Vatek 3D and Carestream 3D. Which is a really cool thing because before our clients, or I should say right now, the majority of them have to do I want to buy a big gaming 3D computer for everywhere, all my treatment rooms, and spend all that money? You just need Google Chrome. All right, again, so this would allow you to open up a 3D plan anywhere. You can open it up at home. Really, you can open it up on an iPad. It's kind of changing the game for a lot of things. But 5-10 years from now, I would be very surprised if we're not native cloud. But I do assume you're going to have people that just don't want to go through the conversion process and they're just happy running Open Dental still.
So I think the moral of the story is that cloud-based is still very early for general dentists. Open Dental, which I'm, if I was starting now, or if I was, if I knew where things were going, I would use Open Dental. I have Dentrix. But Open Dental and hosting it on a cloud is probably one of the more popular things now, or are people still going server with Open Dental?
Yeah, a lot of the startups we work with, they're talking about, hey, I want to own multiple practices someday. So as soon as I hear that, that's the way we push them, because that is the easiest way to manage multiple practices. Right? You have a single database, you put it on clinics mode, you can run 2 different practices. If the patients go back and forth, you don't have to duplicate anything. And then in terms of server costs, right? You still have 1 server. You don't have 2 servers for 2 practices, 2 backups. So when you think about, how corporations make so much money, it's that consolidation of cost. And this is, mini, micro DSOs, whatever you want to call them. This is how they're thinking. So I would predict, I'm flying out next week to Spokane, Washington, and setting up 3 offices they have local Open Dental right now. and we're taking them to a combined cloud database. They're going to save thousands of dollars a month. They're going to, we're going to do the same thing in the Texas San Antonio market in a couple of weeks here as well. So it's definitely that solution. We're seeing a lot more traction to that, especially when the office is like, hey, I have a Vodtech pan, and we're like, well, everything now 2D and 3D can be cloud-based.
Gotcha. Okay. So before we kind of wrap up the podcast, and I'll ask you, how people can contact you and stuff, is there anything else that you think is important that you wanted to talk about to the listeners here?
Yeah, just the importance of things come down in price. So when I first got into this business, Vodtech Duo, which is one of the first machines I installed, and literally their CEO at the time flew over from South Korea with the translator, because that's how now long I've been in dentistry, which is crazy. That was $105,000, right? That same comparable unit now is like 45 to 50. So what I'll say is, like, 5 years from now, we talk about native cloud. You're also going to see 3D hardware, intraoral scanners. There's so much more competition now that the big Goliath companies are having to move on price a little bit. The other thing that I am looking forward to is a DEXIS quality sensor that costs half the price, right? So right now you have DEXIS, you have Schick, Carestream's up there, Gendex, all really high quality sensors, but they're 8,000 and up, right? The titanium sensor is the new DEXIS one. It's very expensive. You'll see some market disruption coming where someone's going to produce a high quality sensor for $5,000 or $2,000, right? And it's going to completely change the market, just like we've seen with CBCTs. So I don't know. Good news coming. You're going to have to spend less money on your initial investment. And when that sensor breaks because your hygienist was crawling around, it's not going to be a heart attack.
So I have it. Now that you brought that up, I have a quick question. What are your thoughts on using one of these repair companies to repair a sensor versus getting a new one? You talked about sensors are very expensive. Obviously, DEXIS is $10,000 or whatever, $8,000, $9,000, whatever it is, versus spending getting a company like Sodium to do a refurbished one, and you pay them $125 a month for kind of a protection plan on it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, yeah. I mean, if you're in the DEXIS world and paying $10,000 a sensor, paying to repair it, but you probably want to figure out why the sensors are breaking. Is it neglect? Is it how your hygienists are doing it? Is it how they're positioning the patient's mouth that's causing them to bite where the USB is meeting the back of the sensor? So I would say, one, find out why they're breaking, because they should last a solid 5 years of normal use. A lot of people can get more than that. But find out why. If you cannot prevent them from doing it, or you don't have time to do it, which is a lot of people listening to this, I'm sure can commiserate with, then that kind of warranty protection plan might bail you out.
Gotcha. So before we end, I told you I like to do these little would you rather. Or these pod decks, they're called. Yeah. So we're going to do a lightning round of questions. So as I always promised, they won't be inappropriate. And some of them are interesting. I've got a couple that are, I think, right your cup of tea here. So so I'll ask the questions, give an answer and a real brief description, and we'll run through these 10 questions, okay? All right. So number one is, would you rather never celebrate your birthday again or never drink alcohol again?
Birthday. I would rather drink alcohol for the rest of my life than celebrate a birthday.
That's an easy one. I'm not an alcohol. I don't drink it. I don't drink much at all. But for people who drink, that's a very very easy one.
I'm in the mantra of a grind daily, celebrate rarely. So I could skip my birthday and just back to work.
It's just another day. That's the way I think of it.
So I want that pint of Guinness at the end of the day, please.
All right. Would you rather spend the night in a dumpster or a porta potty? And they're both used. I always get that question.
I would say, as long as there are trash bags and everything, the dumpster sounds better. But if I'm at a concert and a blackout drunk passed out, I'll take the porta potty.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, porta potty.
I won't remember it anyway. So
no. All right. Would you rather be single for a year, and this includes no dating, or go on bad dates for a year straight?
I think I'd rather be single for a year than just go through that.
Hey, that's why I have these questions. All right, here's a dental one.
Yeah.
Would you rather pull a tooth, your own tooth, with a pair of pliers, or brand yourself with a cattle prod?
I would pull my own tooth.
You would?
Yeah.
All right. This one, I think I know the answer to this one, but we'll see. Would you rather spend a year living at a nudist colony or within an Amish community?
Am I allowed to escape the Amish community after it's over?
Yeah, you can exit the Amish community.
Yeah, I'd come back. I'd be a wonderful cabinet maker, farmer, and we'd take those lessons back to my house. Yes.
All right. Let's see. All right, another kind of dental one. Have your jaw wired shut for a month, where you can only drink out of a straw, or wear an eye patch for a year?
Ooh, I think we just had our annual traction meeting on Friday, and I think if I had to think and not talk for a month, it might do my brain some good. So I'm going to do that one. I might have to entertain that one for real.
All right. Let's see. Would you rather work with dead people in a mortuary or work in the busiest ER trauma unit in the world?
ER trauma unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here's an interesting one. Would you rather be handcuffed to the most annoying person you know for 24 hours or go camping with someone who likes you, but you don't like back?
I think camping would be great because I could be like, hey, I'm going to go get some more wood. And you just like make your own space and disappear for a while. That's
really, that's a funny one. And let's see what I've got. One I always ask. I'm going to save that for the last question. All right, here. Have your most embarrassing photo posted on Facebook or accidentally fall in public and the video go viral?
The second one, because I could try to spin it in some funny way. At least there's eyeballs on it.
Yeah. Hey. What do they always say? Bad publicity is usually is better than no publicity or something. Whatever that cliche is. All right. Last one. And this is a little technology related. Would you rather never be able to use search engines again, or never use your smartphone again? Never use your smartphone apps again.
Oh man. I guess I'll have to stay with the smartphone. I mean, I think I could ask someone. I gotta ask my wife to Google something for me.
Hey, that's
if you took
always
my
a work
phone away, it's over. It's
yeah,
game over.
I agree. I need my phone too. So those are really, some of them are really fun. So this was great. How can people contact you? What's the best way to get in touch with you? I know you're very, how should I say, free with your time in terms of people who ask questions. So what's the best way for people to ask you questions, or people, if they want to contact you for IT consultations, or, best thing is to use. By the way, I didn't even mention it, and I should have. I've been using Darkhorse since last January. So just over a year ago. I didn't even mention that. Wow. Sorry. January of last year, I redid all my IT in my office, and I had Reuben and his team come in and do everything. And then the pandemic hit, but everything's been great. Not really a single issue. No ransomware, nothing like that. So, but what's the best? And I highly recommend his company. They're very responsive. They all are super friendly and helpful. So, Reuben, what's the best way people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Len. So, we have a great team over here. Obviously, I pride myself on being responsive and address people's questions and projects and floor plans as soon as I can. So if you email sales@darkhorsetech.com, I get a notification. My team, I work with Josh and Brian. We all get a notification as well. My direct email, if you have any personal questions, is admin@darkhorsetech.com. But if it's dental IT related, send it to the sales address and we'll take care of it.
So the admin is your own personal email address?
That's mine. And the reason I did that, Len, is because Reuben can be spelled many different ways. And so people have a much harder time misspelling admin. So
that makes sense. I was curious about that because I'm like, am I actually sending this to Reuben, or is this going to someone else who's seeing my email?
Yeah. So that's it's like a catch-all account, but no, that's always been my email address. I'm like the administrator, right? But the thing is, you can spell my name 6 different ways, so I was trying to get ahead of that.
Well, even when I was putting the podcast together in the episode, I had to go back and make sure I spelled your name right. So I understand that completely. Yeah. Guys, thank you for listening to the episode. Reuben, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your expertise in the IT space and about cloud computing and HIPAA compliance and how to avoid ransoms and everything else we talked about today. And do yourself a favor. If you listen to this, check with your IT company. You can ask them for a risk assessment too, and make sure, or you can call Reuben. I'm sure Reuben will be able to tell you if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if not, consider using Reuben and his company. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked the episode, please tell your colleagues. Please share it. Please subscribe to it. Subscribes are great for this podcast. You'll be alerted. They come out every Friday at 1 p.m. Is when the new episode's released. And as I always end these episodes, please remember that your reputation matters. Reuben, thanks again for joining me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thanks for having me, Len.